All right, everyone, we are live now with Coach Alex Balog. Please, Coach, introduce yourself.
Well, good morning, Amaury. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast. Obviously, I'm Alex Balog, assistant coach at Villanova University, Division I school, just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, competing in the Big East Conference.
It's a tough conference, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say that, obviously I'm biased, and some people may not agree with me, but I would say that along with the ACC, the Big East, they're the two strongest Division I conferences. The national champion, Georgetown, came from our conference last year, beating Virginia from the ACC in last year's final. So very, very competitive conference indeed.
And with this whole coronavirus situation happening in the past few weeks in the whole world, but more effectively in the US in the past 2-3 weeks, how has it affected directly the school? Has the school gone online? Are the boys training online? What's going on in your area specifically?
Well, first of all, we're only about 100 miles from New York City, Philadelphia is, which is, not that far. But we haven't had the same amount of problems as New York City. However, I've been working from home for over 3 weeks now. All of our players have been sent home. Everybody at this point is home. Even our internationals have left campus. So the school has moved to a digital platform to offer classes to all of our students, obviously not just the student athletes. So everything is online now, which requires them to be disciplined, to make sure that they manage their time correctly, but also obviously doesn't allow them to train on campus with ourselves, the coaching staff, or our strength and conditioning coach. So they get a plan for each day that we send to them, and it's a lot of body weight exercise. It's a lot of fitness, just on their own. So yes.
How do you send it to them?
We use GroupMe because that also allows us to send little videos and to send little attachments. So that's what we use, and then obviously we also have Zoom calls with them on a regular basis to check in with them. And we, as a coaching staff, we also try to reach out to them on a weekly basis just to make sure that they're doing all right.
How many internationals did you have in your team this past season?
7.
All of them went back home, or they stayed in the city?
All of them are home now. No, excuse me. One of them, our English captain, Luca Meller, is in Florida with his girlfriend's family. But apart from that, all of our guys went home.
And do you think the school has any plan to go back in the fall, or are we still waiting to hear like everybody else?
We're still waiting to hear, just like everybody else. And obviously, the longer this crisis, this pandemic lasts, the smaller the chances are that we're going to have a fall season. Now, I don't think that it's crisis mode just yet for fall sports. I don't think that we're at the point yet where we're going to cancel the fall season, not even close, to be honest with you, because that would also mean that we wouldn't have college football, which is a sport that a lot of athletic departments rely on to fund their athletics programs. So we're not there yet, but the longer it keeps going, the more obviously we worry. Now, it is our job, I think, or our jobs as a coaching staff, to make sure that we keep ourselves calm and our players calm. That's why it's so important to check in with them on a regular basis, because they need to stay physically fit, but they also have to stay mentally fit and mentally sane. And in these times where everybody's just staying inside so much, that's a little bit more difficult. So that's where we really, I think, need to be there for them.
And what do you say for the student athletes that could be watching this, not only your players, but all of the other students, athletes that are maybe looking for a school or playing for another school, as far as managing their time?
You have to stay fit. Right now, that's really, really, really important, that you do the work in the shadows when nobody is watching, which is the hardest, obviously. But also make sure that you stay on top of your academics. And if you're an international student athlete and you're trying to come to the US, there's no SAT, ACT, or TOEFL tests right now that are being offered. So, if your English isn't the greatest, make sure that you keep reading English books. Make sure that you keep reading or watching English movies or shows. Those things, I think, can give you a little bit of an advantage in regards or in comparison to other international student athletes who are not doing anything. but you have to find ways to keep touching the ball. Also, you have to find ways to stay fit. You have to find ways to stay mentally fit. And for a school like Villanova, where academics are so important, our TOEFL score, our TOEFL requirement is 90. Our SAT requirement is roughly 1,400. When we look for players, we obviously want players that can help us on the field. But if you can't get into the school, there's no point in us recruiting you. So make sure that you keep doing the work academically also.
As you touched on the SAT dates that have been postponed and everything, we had a lot of students too, like juniors and seniors in high school, about to take the SATs and the TOEFL, and everything was canceled. Do you think the school would be more flexible in accepting those students for this specific season?
I would hope so. Because the longer these tests are not being offered, the harder it's going to be. And it's not just for student athletes, Amaury, it's also for regular
students in general. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Whether they're Americans or internationals, because we have here at Villanova, we have a very, very large international student body, but only, a fraction of them are student athletes or are representing Villanova on the field of play. So we have to think about things not just from the perspective of student athletes, but the student body in general. And I would hope that not just Villanova, but schools in general in the US are going to be a little bit more lenient when it comes to accepting students that don't have those standardized tests, because otherwise they're going to get left behind.
Yeah, and also the deadline, right? The registration deadline should be extended just like everything else.
But I can already see in a school like Villanova, which typically is very, very stringent with its application rules, that they're being a little bit more flexible. And my assumption would be that if Villanova is doing that, other schools are going to do it too and are already doing it.
And as far as the recruiting process for your program, has it affected directly, or you guys were basically done recruiting for this season?
No, we're actually still looking for one player. So it's affecting us incredibly. The debt period now has been extended until May 31st. From April 15th on, we are allowed to start sending out NLIs again, national letters of intent again. But in terms of going and seeing players perform live, speaking with them, doing house visits, having them come to campus, none of those things are still possible. So I think some schools are still in the same situation as us, but us, looking at it from our perspective, with us still having a substantial scholarship available and us wanting to spend that money for this coming fall, yes, I wouldn't say it's a problem just yet, because especially international recruiting, takes a little bit longer than national recruiting. But if this keeps going, then we're going to be sitting on a lot of money.
Yeah, and also about the international students, they are allowed to send you videos and you can watch it at least, so you can start choosing the players that you'll be able to contact afterward.
We're still allowed to watch videos. We're still allowed to call. We're still allowed to email. We're still allowed to communicate on social media. So all of those things, they're still allowed to do. And I would even say that because we have so much more time as coaches, as a coaching staff, that they need to do that, because again, it's not just us at Villanova. Every coaching staff in the country now has more time on their hands to make sure that they stay on top of their emails, that they stay on top of their recruiting videos. So making sure that you communicate with coaches of universities or colleges that you're interested in right now is very, very important.
So also a very good tip you already gave the student athletes to keep track of their education, try to watch movies online, try to study, as much as they can during this time. And also they are able to connect with coaches, So we're using this podcast just to help not only other coaches around the country as far as the app they're using, what kind of apps each school is using, but also for the student athletes that are looking for schools and don't know what to do at this moment. There are student athletes that are not in school yet, and they're looking for information to get during this time, and whatever they can do to stay fit, they're looking a lot of videos online on YouTube. We're providing videos for training sessions and whatever they can do at home, because it's a crucial time and we have to adjust, right?
Absolutely. And I would also suggest that recruits at this point spend more time identifying universities that they're genuinely interested in versus just blasting out emails to a lot of different universities, not really knowing who they're contacting, because now everybody has time. So figure out which area you want to be in, figure out what you want to study, figure out which division you want to compete in, which conference, figure out what the coaching staff is like. You have more time as a recruit to focus on things that are really going to impact your experience as a student athlete. So use that time wisely.
And as far as summer soccer, let's talk about a little bit of summer soccer. I think everything's been postponed, right?
Well, the MPSL has canceled their season. USL2 still would like to play, but again, the longer this takes, the longer this lasts, the less likely it is going to be that that their season is going to go ahead, because coaches will want to make sure that their players are fit, that their players don't have any injuries, that their players can be on campus to start preseason the right way. So if we now send our players out, there's a risk that after not having trained in a team setting for a while, that they're going to get injuries, more injuries than in the past. So we, looking at it from the Villanova perspective, are going to be pretty reluctant releasing our players to USL clubs.
And do you think that would affect the level they come in? Because sometimes they use their summer soccer to keep in shape, to get playing time, and now they're not going to have, probably they're not going to have that. And do you think you would be able to extend your preseason when they get to the school, or do some extra training?
That's unlikely, although a lot of Division I programs, their players voluntarily come back to campus early to train on their own voluntarily, which obviously is a huge benefit. Now, if you look at past seasons where players were playing MPSL, were playing USL2, there were obviously there were some injuries, and this could, this kind of dead period in terms of team training could lead to the same effects. But we want to take our time to make sure that we build preseason up, probably in a slightly different way than we have in the past. Because if we start going at 100 miles an hour like we always do, like everybody does, that's really, I think, where injuries could start occurring.
Of course. And that brings us to the question that I'd like to ask to every coach that I talk to, as far as the full year college soccer season. Are you for or are you against it?
Definitely for. I think the 21st century model is something that we all need to push for. However, the reality of the situation is that athletic directors, administrators, conference commissioners, the administrators within the NCAA have a lot of other things on their mind right now. And we need to make sure that we push this 21st century agenda at the right time. Looking at it from the perspective of a soccer person and us seeing how irrelevant we are becoming in the MLS and across the world, I really want this model to go through, but we need to find the right time to make it go through. Because if you look at the NCAA on it, I think they had budgeted $600 million to be dispersed amongst Division I, Division II, and Division III schools. From those $600 million, they're only going to be able to disperse $225 million. So that means that there's a lot less money that will be going to Division I, Division II, and Division III schools. So that's going to have a financial effect. If we now push for a 21st century model, which also costs a little bit more money than the previous model, the model that we're currently in, it could be that administrators are going to say, no, we don't want it. So we need to make sure that our timing is right.
And as you said about MLS, I was looking at the numbers, even at the NCAA website, it shows that less than 2% of the college players move on and are able to sign a professional contract. And do you think the reason that we play college soccer is only 3 months out of the year is one of the factors that affects that number?
I'm sure it is, because the bodies of the players are just not used to playing, a 10 or 11 month season. Now, the one good thing about the college season and its timing is that when it ends, it goes straight into the draft. And then the players who are lucky enough to get drafted can go into preseason with MLS teams. But it's just not, I would assume that if we move to a 21st century or to the 21st century model, the draft is going to be at a different time as well. Because it needs to be, there's so many questions that are surrounding this. what happens is there going to be a transfer period in between 2 semesters? I mean, again, a lot of questions that still need to get answered properly. If you look at the Philadelphia Union, which is in our backyard, Coach Jim Curtin is a Villanova grad and was an assistant coach here at Villanova. They don't recruit college players anymore. None. They
Can you hear me, Alex? I think we got cut off.